I have this theory that the new like animation that plays when you hit like on a YouTube video on mobile is just there to increase engagement. It's the exact same thing as when you like a post with the hashtag WWDC. Now Apple has to pay for the hashtag, but same idea. Anyway, yo, what's up? MKBHD here. So Apple's WWDC was today. It's their developer conference, so we know there's going to be a ton of software announcements, and there was. But of course, we were expecting a little bit of an extra surprise on top, maybe some hardware, and we got that too. So there's a lot to talk about today. Let's just jump right into it, Philip DeFranco. So the biggest update is what's coming to iOS 16. This will be coming out eventually as an update to your iPhone and launching on the next iPhone when that comes out in the fall. And there's a lot of new features here. So the biggest one, easily, is the new overhaul to the lock screen on our phones. So forever, just for the longest time, our lock screens on our iPhones have been the same thing. It's the time at the top, and then just a long list of notifications, and then whatever your wallpaper was behind all that. Fine. In iOS 16, the lock screen is way more, I think the word is personalized, which is actually not typical of what we see from Apple, but this is a really nice update here. So you can mess with not just the fonts and colors of your clock, which is cool, but it'll even play with your wallpaper a little bit. So if you have a portrait mode photo or something with depth in your wallpaper, that can look really cool. But most importantly, two things. One, notifications now will roll in from the bottom of the display. It's the opposite of Android right now. And that's much better for actually seeing your wallpaper, and it's much more reachable if, say, Apple is getting ready to sell a bunch of really big iPhones. But then also, two, widgets on the lock screen. That is some real personality on a lock screen. It's a welcome feature, of course. Not only that, you'll also be able to save multiple different lock screens with different wallpapers, different clocks, and different combinations of widgets, and save those lock screens. So then you can switch between those at any time. It's like swapping watch faces on your watch. But then you can also tie a lock screen to a focus mode. So if you have your sleep focus mode and you have your sleep home screen, you now also have a sleep lock screen with your sleep widgets and your sleep clock. And you can have your work lock screen and your do not disturb lock screen. All those things will be synced when you change your focus mode. They'll all have different wallpapers, different clocks, different widgets, whatever you want. That is personality. That is really nice. Music controls are also at the bottom now too, instead of being this massive, huge thing right under your clock in the middle. Oh, and there's now live updating notifications too. So you know how some apps will send you just a bunch of notifications as things update or as things change? Maybe a live score update, for example, sends you one after the first quarter and at halftime. Well, now there's a new feature called, what is it called? Live activities. But it's exactly what it sounds like. Now, one notification can continually update with the latest information instead of having a bunch of notifications from that one app. That is nice, and I know a bunch of apps that could use that update. So the lock screen is a big new thing in iOS 16. But then there's also a bunch of little features sprinkled within the rest of the OS too. One of them in Messages is you can now edit iMessage messages. So that is going to be hilarious. I kind of want to try to see if there's any sort of indicator next to the message that's been edited. I'll play around with this in the beta. I would say definitely get subscribed to see the videos on these new softwares when I actually get to play with them and dive into them deep and make my feature reviews. But yes, you will be able to edit iMessages, and you'll also be able to undo send, and you can also mark a thread as unread. And yes, I am a little bit salty that you can edit an iMessage before you can edit tweets, assuming that doesn't happen by fall. There's also a couple new SharePlay experiences to easily discover things you can watch together with someone, and they dramatically improved on-device dictation so you can move back and forth between voice and touch as you're typing something. This feature looks really cool. It actually looks very similar to what Google just did with the last version of the Pixel, which made the Pixel the best voice-to-text phone on the planet and really changed the way I use it. So I'm looking forward to seeing if this is as good as that. But that's a welcome feature. But then there's a couple other highlights. Do you remember live text, where you take a picture of a sign or anything with text in it, and you can always just highlight the text in that photo straight away? Well, they're bringing that to videos. So any video you take with text in it, you'll be able to pause and live select. And if that works well, that's going to be, I think, incredible. I mean, I feel like that's low-key unreal for students. Like, you just record your whiteboard after a lecture and it just makes your notes more useful. But then they took it another step further, and they also showed a demo of touching and holding a subject of a photo, and it lifts the subject into an object that you can copy and paste like text. That is That's amazing, obviously. It's pretty next level. It kind of just takes all the work out of like tracing something out and making it like a Discord sticker or something we would have used in the past. So that, again, I want to try it, but that seems amazing. Then Apple Maps adds multi-stop routing. Apple News adds more live sports coverage. They also overhauled the Home app in a way that I would very much like Google to copy with their Home app, with the organization and filter toggles at the top and live camera views. This is a really nice upgrade. But then that's pretty much it for iOS. Again, it's not, some huge visual overhaul. That's not what's happening with iOS updates anymore, even though it did happen with Android. But lots of, neat features stacked on top of each other. Boom, iOS update. Can we talk about CarPlay for a second? So they had this statement on stage that apparently 79% of new car buyers would only consider a new car if it has CarPlay in it, which I don't even know if that's accurate. That seems a little high. But I think the point that they're trying to make that I agree with is that most in-car infotainment systems suck. They've been bad for a long time. And so just having Apple CarPlay in your car made the infotainment system much better and much more usable. That's what people wanted. And that was the old CarPlay. Today, we got a sneak peek at the next generation of CarPlay coming out later this year, which not only revamps the UI a bit, but basically is now able to just take over a new car's entire software experience on every screen. Lots of new cars have screens instead of tacks, so the screen behind the steering wheel, a screen to the side of the steering wheel, and CarPlay will literally just be able to take them all over and be consistent across everything. So this is pretty sick. I've always used CarPlay when I have the opportunity on a car that has it. Two things come to mind. One, why would anyone ever use the built-in infotainment system in a car if you have CarPlay just doing everything? And it seems like there's no motivation now for car manufacturers to get really good at making that software. It's just not going to be as good as CarPlay. I don't know, maybe that's a pessimistic view. But two, hey, Apple, have you ever considered making the rest of the car? This is probably a totally new idea you've never heard before, but you've made a bunch of the pieces of the software and using the car, and maybe the rest, maybe like an electric, it's probably, never mind. So, okay, when watchOS came up on the screen at the keynote as the next software they were going to talk about, the first thing I thought was group challenges. Please, let us do group fitness challenges. If they don't do it now, are they ever going to let us do it? Please add that feature. So they added some other more granular information for tracking certain activities. So now instead of just doing a running workout with just distance and elevation like they always do, this will keep track of not just heart rate, but heart rate zones, and let you set up interval training if you want to do that type of stuff, which I do. That's super useful to me. Triathlon workouts will now automatically be able to detect when you've switched from swimming to biking and to running, so you don't have to do it for yourself. Cool. But there's also some more information that will be tracked with sleep. So it'll track your sleep stages. So I do wear the watch to sleep, and it does give me a very basic overview of what's happening, but now it'll tell you all the same stuff basically Samsung's app's been telling me, which is if you're in REM sleep or core sleep or light sleep or deep sleep. Cool. But yeah, no group challenges. It never came up. They talked about fitness all the time, and you can actually close your rings with just an iPhone now and no watch. So they do want people closing their rings and feeling motivated by the rings, but yeah, no group challenges. There's got to be a reason they haven't added it yet, right? But then we got to our first bit of hardware at WWDC, which is the second generation of Apple Silicon in the Mac, the M2 chip. It is officially unveiled, and we'll get to hear all about it. Now, we knew the Apple Silicon transition because they told us would take about 2 years, right? So the only computer that hasn't transitioned from Intel stuff to Apple Silicon is the Mac Pro. That'll probably happen sometime in the next few months. We didn't get a teaser of it or anything, but that's the last one. But this M2 is basically just a second generation of the baseline bottom end of the Apple Silicon lineup. So M1 Pro and M1 Ultra are still higher end chips than this, but M2 is replacing M1. And it's interesting, this is the first time they're going to be able to compare a new Mac chip to themselves, to something that they've done in the past. So it'll be interesting to see what type of performance gains to expect. And there's some decent numbers. So it's a new generation, still 5 nanometer chip with 20 billion transistors, which is 25% more than M1. The unified memory bandwidth is now 100 gigabytes per second, which is 50% more than M1. It supports up to 24 gigs of unified memory, which again is 50% more than M1. And CPU performance is generally about 20% higher, while GPU performance is about 35% higher. And the media engine gets a huge upgrade as well. So while this is the lowest end chip in the lineup, this is absolutely going to get some claimed performance improvements over the M1. I could do a whole separate video on the graphs and the performance stuff. I might actually do that. Obviously, that's down the road. But you do need a new machine to put these new chips in. And so we got that too. Actually, we literally got two. But the one that most people are going to care about is the new MacBook Air. It's a new redesign. It comes in 4 colors now, and it's got a brand new refreshed look. It's not a wedge shape anymore. It's absolutely more flat, and it's looking much more similar in aesthetics to the other new MacBook Pros. It's still extremely thin, 11.3 millimeters thick and 2.7 pounds, and overall 20% less internal volume than the last MacBook Air, but it gets a new MagSafe port for charging on the left, along with 2 Thunderbolt ports. And on the right, there's a high impedance audio jack. The keyboard now has a full-size function row at the top with a Touch ID button, along with a new quad speaker setup and new microphones. But the biggest change is actually the display. It's a larger 13.6-inch screen in almost the same footprint as the last MacBook Air. It gets brighter now, up to 500 nits, matching the M1 MacBook Pro. But you can see it has a new notch, the aesthetic Apple is slowly getting us used to with their new laptop form factor, which includes a new 1080p webcam. This is a large and overall, I think, quite nice set of updates for the world's most popular laptop, the new chip and all the new designs and things surrounding it. But definitely get subscribed. I'm going to be making a full entire video on my more dedicated, detailed thoughts and breaking down this new laptop and all the changes and what I think people will like about it and what I like about it, including why I think the new midnight color might not actually be the best color to pick. But overall, really good laptop. Maybe a little bit on the other end of the spectrum is the new M2 MacBook Pro, also unveiled. And I say that because that is basically the same exact machine as the M1 MacBook Pro, but just with an M2 chip inside it now. That's it, same exact thing. And that's not a bad thing. That's obviously already a very good laptop that I liked a lot. But it just feel like it didn't get the same amount of love as the other new MacBook Pro, so that was interesting to see. So the new M2 MacBook Air starts at $1199, so the price does go up, but they are keeping the M1 MacBook Air around, which is a couple years old, but they're keeping it at that $999 price, so you can still get in to a MacBook Air at $999. And then the new M2 MacBook Pro is $1299. I'll get more into this in the other video, but I feel like there's not a whole lot of people that I would recommend the M2 MacBook Pro to. You're giving up MagSafe, you're giving up the new display, you're giving up the new speakers, the new webcam, the new fast charging, all to just have slightly better sustained performance, which, you know, you probably should end up getting a 14-inch M1 Pro at that point. But again, I'll get more into that in the other video. But of course, we were all wondering what the name of the software would be that they would run on these new Macs. They do this whole big reveal for the software name every year. And so the new version of macOS for 2022, macOS Ventura. So they walked us through it. Ventura, again, is not so much an aesthetic change as much as it's a bunch of useful features put together in one place. You know, a couple of the stock apps get better. The Mail app has better search features, finally. FaceTime handoff between devices is super dope. You know, get home, you're on a FaceTime on your phone, you want to switch to the computer, one button shows up and it's a click away. That's awesome. But probably the most interesting feature that I'm definitely going to want to try is called Continuity Camera. And as you can probably understand by the name, that is literally just using the cameras on the back of the iPhone as your webcam. So there's this optional Belkin-made MagSafe mount coming out later at some point this year, and I'm sure tons of other companies are working on some version of this also. But basically, when it's enabled and your phone is stable, your Mac will just see all the cameras on the back of your iPhone as webcam options. Basically admitting that, yeah, webcams usually suck, so here's an actually good camera. But the craziest part, this is actually probably the one feature that actually really surprised me and blew me away on stage. So it's facing you, it's the webcam, right? It's got the ultra wide here as well. It will see that ultra wide camera, and because it's so wide and it's facing down in front of you, it can actually take the edge of that frame to see what's in front of you, cut it out, flip it over, stretch it, and do some processing to give you a straight up top-down view of what's on your desk. It's called Desk View, and damn, that is cool. I want to try to see exactly how it's creating that angle. Like, I really want to try this and see how close to the computer I can get with the phone that it'll actually see the keyboard and everything in front of me, but that is some impressive and clever processing happening right there. Well played, Apple. Well played. The Mac also got this feature called Stage Manager. I found it kind of odd on the Mac, but I think it'll make a little bit more sense in a second. Basically, it's this side dock looking thing for your active windows, and it keeps the app or apps that you're working on front and center, so on stage. It's basically acting like another set of window management tools. I'm personally probably going to stick with Spaces the way I use that on the Mac already, but this feature is also coming to iPadOS 16, so the iPad gets this. So there were a lot of rumors, people talking about the iPad. Is it finally going to get this overhaul to be more of a computer? WWDC, that would be the time to do it. And this is kind of along those lines. So the M1 iPads will now let you extend your display onto an external display instead of mirroring, and then Stage Manager acts as a sort of window management system. So for the first time on an iPad, you can have overlapping windows and move them around like this and actually resize them. And you can also pair things up, move them off to the side, and have a total of up to 8 active windows open, 4 on the iPad and 4 more on the external display, all in the foreground. That is definitely something to keep an eye on. I like the way the iPad sort of slowly evolves towards being a more capable computer. It is frustratingly slow, but I think that's something I'm going to be giving a shot. I'm going to dive into the betas, get to know the features, and actually tell you guys if they're worth knowing about and using or not. But yeah, that's about it for new software stuff. That's iPadOS, and that's dub. Oh wait, one more thing. Sorry, I almost forgot. The iPad finally gets a weather app. Finally, they did it. They decided it was good enough. Yeah, I don't know if a calculator's happening anytime soon, but bravo, weather. So get subscribed to see the videos that I'm talking about that are also upcoming. Also, check out the link below. I did a masterclass. It's just been a long time coming that I actually am able to say that out loud. So if you want to, you can sign up. That window for signing up for it and everyone taking the class at once is now open. Super cool. And you also get a link, a discount if you sign up at the link below. So that's also below. That's all I got to say for this video. Stay tuned. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.